Hey everyone, welcome back to Taking Back Monday. I am so excited that you decided to say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to a new future of work. And I'm even more excited to introduce you to my new friend, Joanne. Joanne, welcome to the show.
Hey, yes. Oh, new friend. I like that. That's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, when you come on my podcast, you become my friend. You'll basically never get out of my orbit again.
Well, I can handle that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can handle it.
So, one of the things we like to talk about on this show is, I talk to a lot of thought leaders who are trying to change our relationship with work and how we approach the workplace. And that's the whole ethos of this show. I want to know though, what is your origin story? How did you get into this type of work?
Origin story. Wow, it sounds like a Marvel movie, doesn't it? Yeah. What's my origin story? So, yeah, I mean, my origin. I was born to pretty middle class, ordinary parents in the '60s. My father's in the Navy. I was born in Singapore, and I grew up in a world where everything was kind of typical, normal, white, ordinary. In a days where being queer, being LGBTQ plus, being trans was kind of just wasn't there. Just didn't talk about it. AIDS pandemic, and we talked about AIDS in the late 70s, early 80s, demonizing gay, queer people. So I grew up in a world where there was no internet, no mobile phones, no people just didn't talk about stuff like this. But I always had this thing in the back of my head, who am I? Feeling I'm not one of these people that talks about the wrong body. I just felt I was in the wrong queue,
Mm.
being the wrong, being treated differently to how I felt like I should be treated. And I was brought up a little boy. I was a little Cub Scout, a scout, and I always felt I should have been a brownie or a guide. And it was just one of those things that stuck with me. And throughout my teenage years, it stuck with me. And this is all pre-puberty. You hear about kids knowing themselves in their 7, 8, 9 years old. Yeah, but I didn't have any language. I didn't have the internet. I couldn't Google it and figure out what's going on in my head. And so I just got on with life and got married at the age of 22, married to my wonderful wife. And we've still been married for 37 and a half years, 38 years this year, 2 kids. And I've had a career, I've had a life. But I got to my mid 40s and I kind of describe it a bit like, you go into the corner shop to buy a sandwich. And right at the back of the freezer or the fridge compartment is this sandwich that nobody wanted. It's got a bit moldy and a bit manky, and the bread started to curl, the cheese has got a bit green. That's how I kind of felt. I was kind of moldy and past my sell-by date
Yeah.
on my career, which was IT. I spent years running IT companies. And I got to this point with my gender. It was kind of late 40s. Something had to give. And I kind of whacked that stop button of life and on the escalator, and so I kind of got off, took my luggage off and sat there and gone, I'm heading to somewhere because I have to, because my family, my commitments, my obligations, my life, everyone tells me I've got to go this way. I just got to the point where I went, no. And so that's kind of where brakes shot on. I sold my business to my business partners, got out of IT. It had been something that was frustrating me for years. My gender identity came to my forefront after the kids left home, got to that age of my life. So I talked about it with my wife, we explored it. And eventually, the date I pick is the 1st of March 2017. I sold my shares in my business and gender transitioned. And that's where part two came from. So the origin story was getting to that point. And then I was inspired by the support I had from people. I was also aware of the negativity around LGBTQ plus, queer folk, trans folk, and wanted to change the world one person at a time, wanted to create a better experience for somebody else. And that's how it started, really, to become an advocate rather than an activist, an educator, someone who would exemplify what you can achieve if you put your mind to it as an individual. Also, to promote acceptance and understanding around trans non-binary identities. So that's kind of how it started. And that was 8, 9 years ago, really.
You talk about that with a lot of grace and bravery, I guess is the right word, but I can't imagine it was as easy as you described it, like hitting a stop button. There had to have been a couple of moments where that hand pulled back and was like, absolutely not. I can't do this. I can't take this step. I can't take this risk.
Yeah, if I look back on it now, what were the risks? Financial? Yeah, my career, my job, whatever. My self-worth, my family network, my friend network, my reputation, my social capital that I built up over 48 years. All those things. Yeah, you have to kind of, to use a Texas Hold'em poker analogy, you kind of got to go all in on this. You can't sort of put half your chips down. There's no kind of halfway coming out, halfway transitioning.
Hmm.
So yeah, it took many, many years. I kind of was test driving it from about 2012. So 5 years, came out to my wife. I started exploring it, going away for weekends, going to transgender support groups, meeting other people, hearing the woes, a lot of self doubt, a lot of imposter syndrome was in there for me and the people I was around. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't like an overnight thing. It was a 5 years on top of a life of knowing and understanding. And I often say to people that the transition, if you like, actually was less about me, but more about the world. So I kind of pivoted on the point, spun around. My wife, my children, my brother, my parents, my parents-in-law, my family, all my friends, they were the ones that had to do the heavy lift, the hard work. I'd already kind of made that step. Once I came out on Facebook, as I did, just told the world. Once I did that and then owned it, the rest kind of clicked into place. Selling my business was relieved me of my financial. I got some money, gave me some opportunity to restart. Once I told my friends and worked through it, and that kind of social capital maintained, because I was leaving behind my IT career and a lot of my old life, in that it made it easier to find something new. And I think, yeah, what holds us back normally is that fear, that anxiety of the unknown. Um, and I used the phrase necessary. It got to the point in my head where it was necessary to step forward. And until I got to that point, I was holding back. Then one day I realized that I had to go forward. And then the momentum kicked in, self-belief, the support of my wife, my friends didn't abandon me. So then it was kind of like the ball was rolling and I was kind of chasing it down the hill, and became a lot easier. But yeah, you say brave. You're only, in the moment, you're not brave. You're just doing what you need to do. Looking back over your shoulder, wow. Yeah, that is a bit kind of radical.
Right. Looking in that rearview mirror. So now you moved on from IT and you now have a business where you're all about helping people build resilience and purposeful leadership. Tell us a little bit more about positive people experiences. What does that mean to you, and how you create cultures where everyone can thrive?
Yeah. Yeah. Positive people experiences. That's kind of my hashtag that I use. And I was trying to find my message. I'm a professional speaker, I'm an educator, and I consult and advise people in the EDI, DEI space, and trans awareness and stuff. And you hear these acronyms: DEI, diversity, equity, equality, inclusion, justice, belonging, all these kind of buzzwords that if you're in the HR DEI echo chamber, everyone knows what they mean. But I was getting hung up on the fact that what do we actually really mean by this? What are we trying to create? And that's where I came up with positive people experiences. What we're trying to create are experiences for people that are positive. And all I did there was rearrange those three words. I appreciate. But if I'm a candidate in the hiring process, I want to have trust and belief that I'm going to be treated fairly, with dignity, with respect, and come out of it smiling with a positive experience. I don't have to get the job, but I have to believe in the process and that I was given a fair chance. And the same as an employee, as a stakeholder, as a customer, as a shareholder, whatever my interface with you as an individual or you as a company, I just want it to be positive and feel like it's fair.
Yeah.
So that's really what I'm talking about here, is creating fairness and equity in the system so that people feel positive and trust. So we can talk about psychological safety, where people can feel that they can buy in and they can show up, be their whole self, not be discriminated against, bullied, or feel that people are going to be pulling down their glasses, looking over and going, seriously. Um, so that's where it kind of comes from. And my other mantra is smile, engage, and educate. Because I found out in the early days when I was transitioning that how you show up dictates how people react to you. So that first impression, that showing up. So I found that if you walk in with a warm smile, you're open armed, you're engaging, you're friendly, you're all these kind of things, then people are going to reflect and echo that back to you. They'll be interested. They want to listen to you. They value who you are. And then hopefully through that comes the education. People are not going to be educated or listen if you're pointing or wagging your finger and getting angry and shouting at people. So that's kind of how I came up with that mantra. And I realized it in my marriage that in order to be loved, you have to be lovable. In order to be liked, you have to be likable. In order to be respected, you have to be worthy of respect. And I can change who I am. I have the power to dictate how I show up.
Mm-hmm.
If I show up and I'm a dick, I get treated as a dick, basically. If I take this personal responsibility to be approachable, to be likable, to be lovable, and to be worthy of respect, that gets echoed and reflected back to me. So that's kind of my mantras that I really figured out while I was transitioning, when I was vulnerable and I needed people to help and support me. I realized it began with me.
Mm.
I could control how I showed up, how people would reflect that back.
And that is a great realization for an individual. If I'm a leader and I have people on my team who maybe don't fit as you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, the stereotypical traditional white mold, how can I create an environment where people feel the psychological safety to show up as their true authentic selves, to smile, engage, and educate and reflect that back? How can I create that environment and make it possible is not the right word, but easier for those people?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, when I'm working with C-suite, I do a lot of CEO groups, leadership groups. I challenge them to find their why. I know it's an old adage in Silence Sinek and all the other people, but why does it matter to you? What does DEI all about? So I use finding your why of D&I because it rhymes. And I say, just because you read it in the papers, you read it online, people tell you that DEI is important for this, that, and the other. Unless you get it, and if you really understand it, it's just going to be performative. It's going to be tokenistic. It's going to be without passion. So I really challenge people to try and understand and connect, because for me, inclusion and belonging are feelings. I feel included. I feel belonging. I can't give you inclusion. You feel it. So I create environments and cultures where I feel part of it. And I talk about these three elements. It's from ancient Greece, ethos, logos, and pathos. I think it's the ancient pillars of Cicero or Aristotle. So ethos is the ethical, the compliance, the rules, the laws, the policies. Logos is the logical spreadsheet, business case, prove me, give me the logic behind it. But pathos is the emotional connection, which is the people side. So I encourage leaders to think about people first because it's authentic. If I thought you were doing this for the business case for profit, or if I thought you were doing this for policy, that's how am I going to trust you? I want to know you're doing it for the people reason because you believe in it. Yeah. And then, of course, if you get it people right, you'll get the logic, you'll get the logos, you'll get the business case, and it becomes self-fulfilling. So if you create the right culture, belongingness happens. If you create belongingness, inclusion happens. If you create inclusion, then diversity will thrive and people will trust you. So that's kind of the way I approach things, from that culture outwards approach.
And I think that's 100% right, because I was immediately going to go there like, hey, I'm a business. I'm here to make money. What does doing the right thing mean for my bottom line? And we've done a series of research that happy employees leads to happy customers leads to a great brand perception. A great brand perception drives market advantage. So it's not just the right thing to do centering on your people. It is the profitable, strategic, and smart thing to do. because it's going to give you that market advantage.
Because culture aligns with brand values. Yeah. How you treat your people will also dictate how you treat your customers, how your customers feel about, again, I talked about belonging, inclusion. Customers want to feel belonging to you, belonging to your brand. Does it resonate? A number of times I go to this coffee shop and not that coffee shop. It's because of the brand value. I just feel that this coffee shop represents who I am.
Hmm.
The seats, the coffee, the beans, whatever it
Your
may be.
interaction with the barista, like
Yeah.
it's all about you as the customer and the way that they make you feel, right? And centering it back
Mm.
to them.
Yeah. So focusing on brand values, aligning, we've got to align our employer value proposition, our EVPs, our employer brand with who we are, because otherwise it's inauthentic. You go out, you go to market for job placements, and the first thing is all your employees go, well, actually, it's not like that here at all. They're on Glassdoor, they're on Facebook, bad mouthing you. You want to create that end to end alignment and sell who you are, not who you think you are, and that's where getting your culture is right, getting your people, your teams authentically amplifying and promoting your brand because they believe in it as well.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because as a leader, sometimes you can have the best intentions and just unintentionally do something that changes or that perception of the person on the other side of your best intentions, right? So there's been plenty of times where I've been leading a team and my own perspective meant I missed something, right? I didn't understand an experience and I didn't even know that I was missing out on something, but because I wasn't actively trying to build those relationships and those connections, especially in this remote environment. All of my employees work across the world. So for me, I have to work twice as hard to build those relationships and understand their lives and their perspectives.
Yeah, for me, it's I talk about conscious inclusion quite a bit, and for me, the question with conscious inclusion is who am I not thinking about? Whose perspective have I not considered? Whose voice isn't heard? Whether it's in product design, process policy, whatever it may be. So that's where the diversity of thought and diversity of lived experience and perspectives comes into this. So conscious inclusion is really important. And I work on it myself to challenge myself to challenge my perspective because I know I don't have to be right. So if I get people to cross the idea that they don't have to be right, and in fact, they're probably wrong because there are other opinions and perspectives. So if we can seek out those other opinions, seek out those other perspectives and broaden our knowledge base by having different views, then we're going to be more conscious about the inclusion. We're thinking about someone's neurodiversity. We're thinking about someone's disability. We're thinking about someone's ethnicity. We're thinking about even people who are hard of hearing, they have different aspects to their hearing. If you're not subtitling your videos, you're not taking the care and attention to make sure the spelling's right, the words are right. You go, oh, I'll put it through AI, it's 80% right. Well, you're saying that people with a hearing loss only deserve 80% accuracy. Well, no, you've got to put the same effort into hearing as you have into written and everything else. So, yeah, conscious inclusion. Who aren't we thinking about? How can we broaden our perspectives to get more views into this?
There was so much in what you just said, and I really want to come back to it. The idea that someone only deserves 80% of the experience simply because they have a different life experience or something that we're dealing with. Like, you would never say that, right? No one would ever actively say, hey, you can't hear, so you only deserve 80% of this experience. No one would say that. And yet we are saying it by not consciously making the decision to create a 100% experience for the people that are in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, the example I use is I'm left-handed as well as being transgender, but I started off being left-handed first. And you'd be surprised how many things just aren't designed
Hmm.
to work properly for left-handed people. And left-handed people are approximately 10 to 12% of the population. So you'd be amazed at the number of times I go, that doesn't really work for me. Um, I've got one of these thermos soup flasks, which you take the lid off and you pour your soup in it, heat it up. And it's got a spoon in the lid. The spoon, if you're left-handed, when you're trying to use it, it folds up. It collapses. If you're right-handed, it locks. So Thermos, this global brand, designed a product that doesn't work properly for left-handed people. And that's clearly their design team were right-handed. Their
Yeah.
quality control people were right-handed, or someone just went, "Oh, it doesn't matter. They'll figure it out." So my experience on a soup flask is suboptimal. So it's that easy to get it wrong by not thinking about all of the experiences. So when I said 80% good enough, well, a soup flask is now 88% good enough, and it's gone to market globally.
That is I love that example, first of all, that is wild to me. When I was growing up, there was a kid in my class who was left-handed, but his parents desperately wanted him to be right-handed. So he ended up being ambidextrous, he could do both because they basically forced this left-handed kid to fit into a right-handed mold, and, he ended up I mean, he writes left-handed now, but the fact that a global company could create something that doesn't work for a very specific set of people, not their intention, right? Nobody went out and said,
Mm,
let's make sure this thermos doesn't work for left handed people. It was simply just an oversight because they didn't have a person in the room who met
yeah.
that experience.
We see it again, Valentine's Day. It's a very white, straight representation, trying to
Mhm.
find queer representation at Valentine's Day messaging. But we've in the UK, we have a couple of companies who produce these caterpillar cakes, which they created the Colin and Connie love nest caterpillars for Valentine's to represent it. But then at the same time, they're doing LGBT messaging. Hang on a minute. Colin and Connie are these straight caterpillar cakes. How about we have a Colin and Colin and a Connie and
Mhm.
Connie? Or so you can, when you're ordering it online, you can have, I'll have one of those and one of those. But no, it was, the first few years, it was just very straight hetero. And it was also very white middle class. So the names they're using are very white British names.
Yeah.
There was no diversity there. There was no non-binary version. There was no even any polyamorous option. So you could have a couple of Collins and a Connie in there, or three Collins or something. It was again very stereotypical from organizations who claim to be LGBT inclusive,
Mhm.
but then suddenly they go off and do something like that. And then their Christmas cards, their birthday cards, their celebrations are all aligned around the standard, the typical, the average.
There's honestly so much to think about there. And things that as, someone who I live in the middle of the US, I live in like rural America, basically, and things that I don't have a lot of exposure to. And like trying to think about how do I create because my company's global. I work with people all over the world. And so the odds that I'm going to have someone who looks, thinks and acts exactly like me in my orbit are about zero because I'm not working with people who are in my geographical space. But as you're thinking about all the people in the world that you've had a chance to meet, the thought leaders or the people that you know personally, who is taking back Monday? Who's doing this right?
Um, I can think of the ones that are selling out, and we can just name drop Zuckerberg here as someone who's sold out big time in the last 7 days. It's we need people like that, billionaires, to I would describe it as holding the rope. There's obviously a lot of political pressure, a lot of rhetoric going on, probably bullying going on there, and it's a shame that this person decided to capitulate. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but that visible signs of rejecting allyship, rejecting years and years of his personal brand for the sake of pressure by government or potential new government coming in. I think sucks. So what I'd like to see is leaders who are standing up. I mean, I've seen Apple push back. People they're saying shareholder pressure, get rid of DEI initiatives. Apple are holding the rope. Apple are standing there because these organizations, these global organizations, aren't really abandoning DEI. They're just rebranding it for political correctness. They're still producing well-being. They're still making sure their people are right. They're still looking at the best teams. They're calling out the BS of meritocracy and building equity into their systems. But to go onto camera, to go onto the publicly and say, hang on a minute, we're just abandoning all this DEI stuff that we've talked about for years. I think it's doing a disservice to them and the world. So leaders right now who are standing up and pushing back against political pressure are, they all deserve, if you like, my recognition. I can't name them all. Yeah, those are holding strong.
I love that. So Joanne, if someone is really connecting with you, they want to learn more, they want to hear more from you, where can they find you online?
So my name, Joanne Lockwood, if you chuck me into Google or Bing or even ChatGPT search and ask about me. I'm pretty well populated on the first 3 or 4 pages of Google. You can find me on LinkedIn, Joe Lockwood. So linkedin.com/in/Joe Lockwood. YouTube, under See Change Happen, SWE Change Happen.co.uk. I'm on TikTok. Most of my YouTubes are See Change Happen. Most of my other stuff is Joanne Lockwood. So either of those, find me, drop me a DM, book me to speak at one of in your organization, or invite me onto your podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking back Monday with me. This was a great conversation.
Thanks. I've loved it.
Thanks for joining us on Taking Back Monday, where we say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to meaningful and fulfilling work. If you enjoyed today's episode, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you found value here, share the podcast with your network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us inspire more leaders to join the movement. Until next time, let's take back Monday.